Welcome to the Build Different podcast with David Weiss and me, Sam Weiss. I have to say, your beard is looking good.
So the deal is I don't cut my beard until I finish reading the entire series of Little House on the Prairie to my
How
kids.
far?
So
How far
we're in book 2 and we got 7 books to go. So
have
this
you
beard could get big.
have you
We'll see.
read the kind of like the sister series from the about the boy?
Wait, about Almanzo? That's part of the series.
Oh, is that just part of the series?
Yes,
See,
it's the
okay, well,
best. Almanzo is amazing. Like
wait,
he
what?
is amazing.
Ashley's read these all to the kids. I have not read all of these. I
Oh,
know,
dang.
I know. It's
Okay, Farmer Boy, like the first one is fantastic. Farmer Boy and The Long Winter are by far the best. I mean, they're all good. There's one they published after she passed away. They went through her belongings and they found a book that she had never published. And there's a reason she didn't publish. It's not good.
it's not good.
Like, but other than that, but I'll read it for like completionist tendencies. But yeah, it's I kind of go through this Narnia, like there's series that will go through, and the kids
Yeah.
like this younger crop of kids need it, and so we're going through it. And my girls said, "Dad, next time you read this, we want you to grow your beard and not cut it just like Pa, because in Little House on the Prairie,
So
Pa is not like Charles Ingle Wilder on the movie. He
in the
has a
movie
big
or the
old
TV
beard.
show.
Yeah, the TV show
So
too. Yeah.
not trimming it at all or just not shaving it off?
Okay, I trim down here and like a little bit here if like random stuff happens, but I'm trimming up here, but yeah, I'm not gonna do anything.
You're
I'm
going to
just
let
gonna
it
kind of
grow.
like,
Good deal. All right. Well, let's get started then. So today the intention is to discuss kind of the down to earth realities of building a business using these AI tools. And to start with, I want to read a tweet. This is from a gentleman named Alex Finn. It says, "Building and launching an app changed my life. I promise you can do the same thing, even with no programming experience at all. By far, the best tool to do this right now is Claude Code. Here's my complete beginner's guide." And then this is a series of posts, and in it, the kind of steps are like choose an idea, install Claude Code, how to use Claude Code, how to debug, and then like some tips and stuff like that. So I came across this, and I don't wholly agree with this. I think this is like, oh, maybe a little bit of hype train, maybe a little bit of snake oil, like maybe a little bit of, I don't know. So I'll go through kind of the my history here. And so about a year ago, I decided to see what I could do with vibe coding. I was like, what could I do? And I built a web tool that did something that I wanted to do for evaluating outdoor mesh networks. And I spent a couple months. I got it working. It was great. I launched it in January and nothing happened. and and like what nothing happened. And I was like, this is crazy. Like, here's a cool tool. I know some people want it, but like nothing happened. And it was this like really great learning experience of like, oh, like distribution or promotion or marketing. Like
well, there's a say,
people need to
yeah, there's a
know
what,
about the thing you make.
yeah, there's a saying that like first time founders think all about products, second time founders think all about distribution or something like that. And I just think there's real truth to that. Like you scream into the void. I've certainly had this same experience. You scream into the void enough and you're like, yeah, like I can have something really good, really helpful, and also no one knows about it. It's like as if it doesn't exist. So you have to like, and like on top of that, the world is like super noisy, like genuinely noisy. And so something has to give. Like somehow you've got to have an edge. And I don't think that's trivial, you know? There was like Gold Rush apps, like the App Store Gold Rush. That was a time when like so much, again, this is a rising tide type scenario. Tsunami of people getting on their phone. The very first thing they do is like open, like I remember the Halcyon days, like you would get one of my friends, he had an app on the App Store and he just got massive downloads because all of these people were flooding into the app ecosystem. buying new iPhones. And what do you do when you get a new phone? You check the App Store, and like getting surfaced on the App Store or getting ranked was like everything in those days. And that's not the case anymore. It's saturated. I
No,
mean, there's a lot of saturation. And Apple tried to make things better, but the general, like, now that that wave is over, it's like back to business as usual. It's just like, you got to find people. That's hard.
that's what it seems like to me. And so when I read stuff like this, it's like, oh, you just need an idea and you need a code like, and you're going to be happy forever. And it's like, no, like I experienced this. I built a thing that I know people need, but it turns out that like getting the word out is like a whole part of this problem. And business is more than just like the idea and vibe coding.
Yeah, I've been thinking about this recently with this is one thing that, like, legitimately, things like Y Combinator, there is a distribution part of that trade-off. Like when you sell a bit of your company, a lot of your company actually in that case, to Y Combinator, one of the things you get is like a bunch of distribution internally to all the Y Combinator like people that startups, if you're building something even remotely useful for a tech startup. And then on top of that, they'll tweet about it, they'll post about it, um, and that's significant. If you can get a couple hundred customers paying a significant, a significant amount of money, you earn the right to live another day, and that's a big deal.
Yeah, 100%. I it, in more recent efforts in a current project, I have gone so after this experience of like building this tool and then like nobody knows about it. And I tried to run some ads, had no idea what I was doing, like didn't nothing happened. Um the current project I'm working on right now is like, digital space, heavy marketing focus. And this is my attempt to like really dig in and try to understand that side of things, which is one way to get distribution is basically pay for views, right? Pay for reach.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
And that's been an interesting experience.
Well, so I guess there's like, we're kind of focusing on just distribution as if you solve that problem, then all of a sudden everything else gets solved. I think there's just still a lot of real issues. The AI is a lever. It's like high leverage. It's a high leverage tool. You literally can build some pretty great tools for yourself or for others with much less input costs. But there's conditions, there's issues. Some of those issues are just like purely technical. I mean, you can, AI slop your way through to something that works. But then like my experience with AI right now is that it really sucks at architecture. So as soon as you start growing, then you've got to like fix the whole thing. And to fix the whole thing, you're gonna have to build it, bring in someone. But maybe if you grow enough, then you can afford to pay a human to come in and fix your AI slop.
Totally.
Like that's maybe a part of it. I think there's another part of it, which is you need to find a need and fill a need. And that is also difficult. It's also challenging because you might think, oh, there's definitely like typical thing is you project, right? You say, oh, I need this. I would really like this. I would pay for this. Therefore, there must be a market. And it's that like last leap. That's like the painful one. And so you build it and it's like, well, actually you're not like a lot of people. And, there you're not like it's really valid market validation. Are you building something people really want? And okay, my I just got an email from today I got an email from one of the startups I worked on, and it's dying today. Like they're redistributing all the investment, and they sent me a little notice basically saying that like I was going to get nothing because the investors were going to get whatever liquidation, like that was the letter. Anyway, today, and one of the like there's a lot to do. I can do a lot of analysis on this, but one of the issues is that product was a vitamin. Like we were selling vegetables. We were like, this is going to help your life, but you got to eat your vegetables. That is very different than like a painkiller where you're like, hey, your hair's on fire. You got like a major problem. You need to solve it right now. And ours was like kind of a vitamin, like it like truly was. And so it didn't do well. So you can have something that's like genuinely better than anything else in the market, but if the need is not like hair on fire, gotta have it, then you're not like you're not it's almost like you're not relevant. And that's hard to figure out. And it's hard to like here's the thing that I love about AI, Sam, is that you can do market validation faster and cheaper than ever before
100%.
because you
Yes.
can get it out there and you can get out something even kind of sloppy. I mean, it could be totally vibe coded, AI slop, whatever you want to like pejorative you want to throw at it. But then you can immediately see the signals without having to have burnt through several $1 million. That's a real thing. Like that's cool. That is genuinely cool. And a good developer who understands like that like in software that understands that complexity is the arch nemesis, that is the thing you've got to tamp down. If you have someone that understands that, then all of a sudden they understand, okay, well, this is how I've got a kind of architecture or like put guardrails in front of the AI so they don't go off the, you know, throw your agent.md or claude.md files in there, organize your thing, everything well, good unit tests. If you do that, then AI can just be a really great lever. But if you don't have that skill, then you're going to go the AI slop route, and that's okay for validation. But then you're going to have to fix it,
Yeah.
probably,
I think,
like
but
almost certainly.
that's what excites me as a non-software developer. What excites me is that I can have an idea, build some version of that idea with full expectations that if this idea works, the whole thing's going to have to be rebuilt by somebody who knows what they're doing.
I
Especially
mean,
if there's any chance that this thing is going to work and then needs to scale, I guarantee that like it's going to have to be retooled. But in the meantime, like a little bit of my time and a $20 a month, I get to build something and go test to market. That's awesome. So cool.
yeah, I mean, it really is. It really is. But you've got to have that. Like, this is where, I mean, you're almost at an advantage to, there's several developers I know who are basically, their focus is on the craft, the beautiful, polished
Yeah.
craft of software engineering. And definitely like appreciate that. Like I do. But when you're trying to validate, that's like not the goal. You're like literally goal one is validate that you have something that's valuable enough that people will pay for to a sufficient amount that you like have a 60% gross profit margin, like, or at least 60%. And ideally like, 90%. And if you can do that, then you can start talking about like, okay, what about the thing? How do we make this better? I always think about it as like, there's building the right thing and there's building it right. And a lot of builders, a lot of people who are creative and they just love the craft. They love building it right. And they should. It's a beautiful thing. I love software. It's a wonderful material. But when you're building a business, it's not the product. You're building a business. And to build the business, you have to make sure you're pointed in the right direction, that you're building it right. Sometimes you can get by with like choosing a market or choosing a customer. There's a lot of growth and kind of ride that wave. That can carry you through. But at the end of the day, you really have to make sure that you've got a great offer and it's doing something that people actually want. And you know, it's hard to suss that out sometimes.
So what do you see as like for I don't know, for the person who wants to leverage these AI tools? But isn't hasn't bought into the idea that like I there's more to business than just building the product, right? Like than just leveraging the AI to build the product. Where does AI fit in helping noobs and novices build businesses?
I think it fits a lot of different places. One thing is that you could do a lot worse than just doing what your AI thought partners tell you to do. Like, they're like so Axiom, I built this app. It's a, it's a, it's a executive board. I wanted an executive board when I was first time CEO. And so like, when I saw this, I'm like, oh dude, I'm just going to build this. And, it's super useful. I have customers that are paying me and it's, it's helpful, like shameless plug. But what what I find is that these group of, I guess we'll call them AI agents, although that definition is really kind of swirly these days. But these group of LLMs, because I use lots of different LLMs to, for their different strengths and weaknesses depending on the topic. They really focus you to think about like things that you didn't think about. Most people are not like great strategists, right? Like most people don't like saying no to everything, which is like the essential part of strategy. A lot of people aren't really good at marketing. They don't understand what that looks like. They don't understand what like being a, uh, you know, they don't understand finance. They don't understand law. They don't understand, you know, operations or like all of these things that go into making a business successful. It's not built into them. They haven't like it's not and a lot most people are trained in the School of Hard Knocks. But when you can just pull up ChatGPT, let's say, or Claude or Grok or Gemini, whatever, and just say, "Hey, I'm thinking about doing this. What do you think?" And that is like that. It's like here's the distribution of like good operators. Let's say, no, not this side. Bad operators, good operators. And there's a distribution. Some are really good and some are, I don't think AI is going to ever really get, I mean, some people think super intelligence is going to, push past this, but at a minimum, you can avoid this whole area of the bad curve because AI is right here today. It's like 60% of the normal distribution. And you'd be crazy, in my mind, you'd be crazy not to avail yourself of that, of a thought partner that can help you like, oh, dang, I didn't think about that. That's a great idea. I should probably consider that. And sometimes you'll start the conversation, and you'll be like, yeah, I knew all this. And then you'll get like, just keep pulling on that thread. And then all of a sudden you'll be like, dang, I did not think about that. You still have to make the decision. These people are like these agents. I call them people because like in Axiom, I do actually I have them look like, humans, but the, the, the LLMs are, like, you got to make the decision. They're not going to be able to do that for you. And that's what it is to build a business, push back the void and build something new into the world. And I mean, I think that is a thought partner is a super, very good, useful way of doing it. I do also like back to Claude Code or Codex or Copilot or whoever you want to use to help you with your coding, using those tools to prototype, man, you'd be crazy not to. I think that's like, if you're doing something technical.
I liked what you said, or I liked that you called them thought partners, because one of the hype things that I bought into early on was that these tools were going to do things for me, like outside of write my software. They're good at writing software, to some degree or whatever, but they were going to do other things for me. And I think that we'll get there, but it turns out that like there's still a lot that any business, aspiring entrepreneur needs to do, whether it's like connecting accounts or setting up advertising or actually having to, take the information from the thought partner and then put it into the post and find a creative, like there's still a lot of work that has to be done, even though you have this really great thought partner. And I think this will change in time, but right now, you can't just say, go build me a business that's profitable and like tell me what to say in the video and we'll make $1 million. There's still a lot of work for the individual to do, even though you get to lean on these tools to help.
Well, I think let's pull on that. I think a little bit more because I think this is a really salient point. You're okay. Let's start from the perspective of the builder. The builder is like loving their craft, software or building tables or whatever it is that you're putting into the world. You're going to have this like builder ethos, right? The thing that has to transition is you have to transition from loving the object that you're building, solid, this like polished piece of awesomeness, to loving the building the factory that builds that thing. So you have a product and then you have the product that you're building that builds the product, which is the business. And if you don't like, this is why there's all these like, business books that are like, you've got to think through your process. You think through like operations, finance, sales, like how do you do things, document it, write it down, that you can optimize and that kind of thing. Because no one does it. Everyone just kind of wings it, flies by the seat of their pants. And they're like, wow, it's not working. And it's like, well, yeah, you're just kind of winging it, you know? And that is, now there's some amazing companies that really get this. I think Apple is very disciplined. McDonald's, obviously, a lot of manufacturing is like this, but there's a lot of businesses that just do kind of wing it. And over time, as they mature and their capabilities develop, they're like, oh, like I really cares. I really care. Like I actually really need to care how my customer interacts with our sales and support staff, or I really need to care what their first experience with us is, or I really need to care how we're presenting our brand worldwide, or like all these details. Anyway, that's the, like, if you're going to be a business, you've got to recognize that that's the product that you're also building. You're building the machine that builds the machine.
Yes.
And I think that's pretty crucial. And most people don't even, like, that doesn't even dawn on them in my experience.
I think that's right. Okay, so then this kind of transitions to another thought that I wanted to pull on today, and that is this idea of the difference between or the value of idea versus execution. And this comes from a recent tweet by Elon where he was like, in rare cases does the idea matter? It's execution that matters. And I think that that is true. When I think of this the mesh planner experience I had over this last year, I think of like, in hindsight, I think like, man, I executed in building the app, but then I like stopped executing in the rest of the stuff that needs to happen for this thing to build. Like there's like more to be done.
Then
And so from
building
that
the
standpoint,
product. Yeah.
yes, yeah, yeah. So from that standpoint, it's
Yeah.
like, idea shrug, but I think it would have done better had I continued to execute on the rest of what is required for business. That all being said, um, I don't think the idea is nothing. It seems to me that it holds some value. People should take a moment to consider the idea. They should take a moment to try to validate the idea, to validate that there's a need for that idea, and not just say, I'm going to take any idea and execute, 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 execute. Another way to say that is take whatever your idea is, go execute, but then pay attention to the signals and pivot as necessary, make adjustments as necessary, depending on what the market is saying. Because like there are bad ideas that I feel like independent of how hard you execute will fail. The majority of small business fail, and it's like um, the idea has some weight. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, yeah, I mean, I tend to agree. I think that the issue really is one of definition. So what does it mean to execute? Like the builder is going to, when they hear that, they're like, yeah, I need to, like, hands on keyboard, button chair focus, or like, I just need to, like, build this, if I'm a carpenter, I need to, build this house or whatever. I think the execution, what they don't understand is that the execution is everything idea, is it's the execution across all of the business functions of the business. And so it's not, uh, which is really discouraging. Like when you're excited about building this thing and you're like, wait, so I got to spend all this time doing marketing. I got to spend all this time doing sales. I
So
got to spend all this time
painful.
doing finance. And I got to file taxes. And like, oh, and I got to hire people. I got to learn how to train them and manage them and like all this crap. So I think that's the execution that is at play. And at a reasonable scale, execution really means dealing with these squishy bags of water we call people, and that is a real challenge. That's like a difficult challenge. So that's one piece about execution. I think so that if you define execution that way, I'm gonna like probably assent and say like, yeah, I mean, execution really matters, but there's also a quality or type of execution. I like this idea. I read this book years ago about the 7 ways that you can build a durable competitive advantage. And they basically boil down to network effects, scale economies, counter positionings, which is essentially a new business model, switching cost, branding, cornered resource, and process this power. The assertion is that, like, if your business is to be durable long term, you must have at least one of these. You can have multiple. That's great. That's even better. But you must have one. And so while you're executing, if you take your eye, again, this is back to like building the business rather than the thing. If you take your eye off of like, how is what I'm doing actually strategically guiding me towards one of these durable competitive advantages, one of the 7 I just mentioned, then the net result is someone else and you're competing with the world essentially in many ways. Someone else is going to like take that approach, and then you're not going to be set. Now, I will give a little shout out for local businesses, which I love. Local businesses are kind of like a little bit protected from this because you're not competing in this hyper competitive global market, and you're just competing for the people in your town or city or whatever. And so that like that helps. But anyway, that's why I think that's the argument against, this idea that the idea is, I guess what I'm saying is execution involves that. Like if you're going to say, well, execution is everything, it's like, yeah. And let's talk about what that means.
Very good. All right. Well, so let's bring it home. One of the things that in the context of this discussion about execution versus idea, and also the idea that like we can leverage these AI tools to build businesses. I was like, man, what are some of the things that I would recommend to somebody who wants to try to build a business today? And one thing I realized this week was with the Mesh Planner project. A year ago, I started building it. I launched it 9 months ago. There wasn't anyone to tell about it, and then I like stopped. An entire year before that, I was doing a lot in the space that this tool was living in. And I realized today that had I been documenting what I was doing there and telling people about what I was doing there, in this case, like the little hardware I was building and selling and the tests that I was doing and the design philosophies I had I been doing that for the year prior to this, by the time this product launched, I would have had someone to tell about it. And this gets to just audience building in general. One of the things that feels acute to me now in hindsight is had I spent more time creating content of some sort, building an audience of some sort, it would have been easier to promote that product and cheaper too, like not paying for ads. So that was one of the things. And one thing that's cool about content creation in the modern era of AI is AI can help a lot. Whether it's creatives or text, there's a lot of things that we can do to leverage that. Um, but what so audience building and like more and more I'm becoming a believer, even though I really feel yucky about like being a content creator, influencer, that type of stuff. I'm feeling more and more that man, I should make an effort to build an audience so I can tell people about the stuff that I'm making. Um, what other things come to mind as far as like what people should, what recommendations you would make to people who are trying to build or start and build businesses in this era?
This is a great question. I mean, I think that what like common failure modes that I certainly have observed or personally experienced is like build first, validate later. We talked about that a little bit. Like you cannot skip validation because you're so excited to like build this thing. And that's a really different, like validation is a really different muscle. And you've got to be like so systematic and almost like persnickety about like, I'm trying to test this one thing because this one thing will unlock this other thing, which then I can test. And when you're doing that, you're almost like forcing yourself to do the crappiest job you could possibly do, except for that one thing you're trying to validate, right? And in software, this is like it's extremely painful because you test something and someone's like, "Oh, that's junk," and you're like, "Well, if you saw the whole vision, you'd love it," And it's like so validation is really that's a skill. Like you'd want to like look up at that and say like, how can I paper prototype? How can I do this on the cheap? How can I, validation would be the first thing I would do. I think the other thing is it's really connected to validation in my view, but I think other people might frame it in a different place in their brain, but like just get it out there. Like you cannot know what you think, well, I've got to have it right. It's got to, this has to be premium. It's got to be quality. It's got to be like wow factor or whatever you're like saying to yourself. It's just really hiding. You're just hiding. And you just got to put it out there and recognize that everyone hates their first MVP, but the value is in the learning that comes after that stage. And delaying that learning is like the really hard thing. And so, you know, anyway, those would be don't do that. If they build it, they would come. Don't do this, spray and pray. You're like throwing it out and just seeing. I do think building an audience matters, but really, there's this idea of like falling in love with the problem you're trying to solve. And if you really genuinely fall in love with the problem, and the problem's sizable, it's worth solving, and like people are willing to pay for it. One good way to go about that is literally just share your building. You share, well, like there's this build in public idea that's kind of come into vogue over the last several years. But if you just build and say like, hey, this is a problem I care about, you're going to amass kind of the audience that is having that same problem. And to the degree that the problem is widespread and acute, that kind of like grassroots, like got it will just kind of like magnetize to that. And you'll build your audience, and then they'll be able to help you, you'll be able to help them at a minimum. And at a maximum, you learn so much about, like, you become world expert in that problem, and then you're a world expert in how to solve it. And that's a pretty enviable place to be.
I like it. Well, I don't know how to end a podcast, but this has been episode 1 of Build Different. So we'll be releasing these every Friday. Thanks
Love
for
it.
listening.
Later.